Margaret, thank you so much for joining us here for this conversation. You are passionate about all species, plants and animals, and you have a decade of service to CURE on CURE's board and another decade before that of being a CURE member. Your education on the prairie was absolutely not limited to the classroom. You have led prairie walks for many, many years for many, many organizations. And I'd like to ask you to tell me a little bit about those walks.
Well, I'm trying to put myself in the middle of the prairie right now, and it's late June. So if we could be out there walking together, we'd just see this riot of color. There are yellow flowers and white flowers and bright fuchsia flowers and little tiny violet flowers and all sorts of, and the early spring or the early season summer grasses are starting to bloom right now. So we'd be able to go out and easily see, 30 species that are in bloom and we could talk about right now.
Tell me about the importance of time in nature.
So I grew up as what I think of as a wild child. I was privileged to live in a recently developed, housing development that was on the edge of old fields that I was allowed to go out and roam in. And there was a creek that was very near my house. And so as a child, I spent a lot of time just out roaming around in not very pristine nature, but it was still nature. There were birds, there were wildflowers. Through doing that, I just absorbed nature as my home. And there's actually environmental education research to show that people who express a desire to conserve natural areas that are really lovers of nature, often it's their childhood experiences, either alone or with a mentor in nature, that leads people to have a very deep and lifelong connection to natural systems. From personal experience, I can say how formative, being allowed to just be in nature was for me. And there's, as I said, research now that backs that up. But that the way that we should approach introducing young people to nature would be first through awareness. And like I said, so you go out with little bitsies, you take them out and you say, what colors do you see? What do you smell? What do you feel? Use all the senses to get little, like kindergartners, involved. Because you're not going to tell them some biology facts, right? You're going to get them to be like, this is really cool. And then once at any age you've got some awareness of what's out there, then you can, and as I said, I lead with things like interesting stories or colors or whatever, and then you start to talk about these relationships like, legumes fix nitrogen and this is why nitrogen is important. Maybe teach the scientific or common name of plants or birds or whatever. Once you've got awareness and awe and you've got understanding, I don't see how people can't develop concern. I mean, it just seems like the logic, but so often I see maybe elementary science educators who don't really know that much science and maybe don't have that much experience out in nature. And they'll lead with things like, we need to go pick up litter, or, pollution, it's bad. So you're leading with this sort of like concern before you know what you have to lose. Mm-hmm. What a lot of people will come out here to Western Minnesota and feel like it's just cornfields and soybeans, and it is a lot. But if you get out of the green blur and you start to look closely and find the prairie remnants and look at how the stream, the mussels in the streams and things like that, you can see that there's a lot here that we still have to enjoy and to preserve and to fight for. About a third of our state was originally tallgrass prairie. That's a rough approximation. So anyway, of that third of our state that used to be prairie, if that's 100%, there's only about 2% of our native prairie that's left, and the rest of it has been converted to agriculture primarily, or to urbanization or roads or, whatever. I grew up in Iowa where its situation's even worse, where, pretty much the entire state of Iowa was covered originally by prairie. And there's only 1/10 of 1% of the prairie that's left. Let's say that this was a 1,000-piece jewelry collection or something like that was worth, a whole bunch of money. We have one precious piece of that collection left. And so we better not sell it. We better not melt it down and turn it into something else. We got to save it as a cherished heirloom.